What's up, everybody? It's Caroline here from the DET team with tips to help you test your best. In this video, I'm going to talk all about a new question type called interactive listening. As of May 1st, 2023, interactive listening will be part of the certified test. You might have noticed it on our practice tests these last couple of months. So in this video, I'm going to explain to you what it is, how it works, and why we're adding it to the test. And at the end, I'm even going to do a live demonstration of this question with my best tips and tricks. Here to help me explain why we're adding it to the DET is my friend and research expert, Dr. Ramsey. Look at that, Dr. Ramsey is here with us. Thanks for coming, Ramsey.
No problem.
So can you tell us what you do at Duolingo?
Sure. So I have a PhD in educational measurement, and I'm an assessment scientist who specializes in researching the validity and efficacy of the test.
That's an important job. Can you tell us what interactive listening actually is?
So interactive listening is basically a simulated conversation that requires you to use your listening and reading skills together to complete an interaction. And for the context of these conversations, we've chosen academic settings where you'll be interacting with a peer or a professor.
Can you tell us a little bit about why we've added this to the test?
Absolutely. This question assesses longer form listening skills in context, which helps evaluate the English proficiency skills you'll be using on a university campus, especially because all the conversations for interactive listening are in an academic setting.
And will there be any other changes on the test to accommodate this new question?
Yes, we've kept the test about the same length at about an hour long. And so to make room for interactive listening, we are removing listen and select, the question where you distinguish between real and fake English words by listening to audio prompts. But keep in mind that read and select, where you identify real English words that are written on the screen, will still be on the test.
I wonder if test takers will like it or not like it that listen and select will no longer be on the test. Let us know down below if you are going to miss that question or if you're happy to see it go. Okay, now let's get into the details of what you'll be doing in interactive listening. So remember that these are basically simulated conversations, and there's going to be 2 of these on every Duolingo English test. In one conversation, you'll be talking to another student, and in the other, you'll be talking to a professor. Again, these are in an academic setting, so it'll be something around the type of work or studies that you'll be doing at university. In these conversations, the first thing that you'll do is read some context about the conversation you're about to have. So read closely when you get to these questions. Then you're going to choose an option from a list to start the conversation. So keep in mind the details that you just read about in order to choose the best option. Then your conversation partner, either the student or professor, who will be portrayed by a Duolingo character, will respond with an audio prompt. So you'll have to listen to hear their reply. Then you keep the conversation going in this way for 5 or 6 questions. At the end, you'll be asked to write a summary of the conversation you just had. For the listening section, you have 4 minutes to complete all 5 or 6 replies. And for the summarization task, you have 1 minute and 15 seconds to write a summary of the conversation you just had. Interactive listening, of course, affects your overall DET score, and the listening section affects your comprehension and conversation subscore, while the writing summary affects your production and literacy subscore. Now let's get into some tips and tricks for these questions. First of all, pay attention to the relationship between the speakers. How would 2 students talk to each other? How would a teacher and a student converse? Listen closely, as there is only one play of the audio prompts. Similar to interactive reading, more of the conversation will be revealed as you move through the exercise. But don't worry if you don't choose the right answer. The test will let you know so that you can still get the next ones correct. Read closely in order to keep up with the conversation. And feel free to scroll up in order to reread the scenario and the conversation thus far. Finally, remember the important points of the conversation for the summary task. Speaking of the summary task, let's talk about some tips for summarize the conversation. First of all, remember that this is a writing task, so make sure to use all the usual best practices for writing, including varied word choice, high-level vocabulary, proper grammar, spelling, and punctuation, and a variety of grammatical and sentence structures. Don't worry if you didn't choose the correct answer in the previous section. Focus on the new task of summarizing the conversation. You don't have very much time to write, so feel free to start with the facts about the conversation. And finally, write as much as you can in the 1 minute and 15 seconds, as long as it is a summary of the discussion. So that was a lot of information, and if you're confused, don't worry. A lot will make sense when you see the task. So one recommendation I have is that if you haven't already checked it out, you can do it on the practice test, and I'll also walk you through a live demonstration right now. Okay, so this is what you're going to see when you reach an interactive listening section. Remember that I told you you're going to get information about what the conversation is going to be about? That's here, so make sure you read this closely. Also, you should know that your timer has started. You've got 4 minutes for the next 5 questions, and this is part of it. So I'm reading this. I know that I'm a student in a journalism class. After today's lecture on reporting, I approached my professor to ask them more about what it means to cultivate sources. So maybe I'm not really familiar with cultivating sources, but I know I'm a student. I have seen a lecture, and I have a question about it, and it's a journalism class. I'm going to start. So again, the first thing you're going to do is pick the best option to start the conversation. This option right off the bat already sounds like what I just said. I had a question about something you mentioned in today's lecture, so I'm going to select that, but I'm going to quickly read the other 4 here and make sure I'm confident in my choice. Okay, I am. I'm going to press next. Looks like I got that one right because it's green here with a check mark, which is great. So listen to his reply. Remember, you can only play these once.
Sure. What was it?
Okay, that's a pretty short one. He just wants to know what my question is. I can see that 3 of the options here right away are questions, so maybe I'll pay a bit closer attention to them. I'm reading through my options. I'm going to go with this one. Okay, looks like I got that wrong because it's red with an X and my response is crossed out, but they do give me the correct response, so now I can keep the conversation going. So the correct response was he was talking about how reporters should cultivate sources. Can he explain that concept a bit further? Let's listen to his reply.
Absolutely. Cultivating sources refers to the process of developing relationships with people who can provide information for stories. This can be done in a number of ways, but some common ones are attending events that potential sources are likely to be attending, initiating conversations, or asking current sources for additional people they may know.
Okay, he's talking a lot about developing relationships with people. These are some possible replies I can give. I'm reading through these. Okay, networking sounds good because it's about, again, creating relationships with people. I'm going to press next. Got that one correct. And now I can actually see the transcript of what he said in that reply. So I have that for the task. Let's listen to his reply.
In a way, yes. But unlike traditional networking where the goal is to meet as many people as possible, the goal with cultivating sources is to develop deeper relationships with key people who can provide you with information that you need about a topic.
Okay, so he was talking about relationships with people, and I already see that this response is about relationships. I'm going to select that, but again, I'm going to check all 4 other options, make sure I believe that's the best one. I do, so I'm going to press next. Got that one right, great. And also notice when I press play, the timer pauses.
It makes your job as a reporter more efficient. Instead of having to call strangers for information or contact public relations departments, you can reach out to your sources and get the information that you need quickly and easily.
Okay, this is my last question. That means I'm about to end the conversation. Let's see what I think is the best. Reading through these options, that makes sense. I'm going to try this one. Unfortunately, I did not select the best response, but they do show me what I should have selected. So now you're done with this listen and respond portion. But look, you still have a minute left on your timer here. You don't want to waste that time. And I recommend going back to the conversation and rereading this whole transcript because remember, your next task is to summarize this conversation. So I'm going to reread this and I'm going to make a little mental outline for myself for what I'm going to write when I get to the summary task. Okay, so I had a question. He said, sure, what was it? I said, can you explain the concept of cultivating sources further? He says, yes, he's talking about relationships with people who have information. Ways to do that are attending events, having conversations, asking sources for people they know. I ask if it's like networking. He says, in a way, yes, but we're looking for meaningful relationships rather than many relationships. I say, why is it important? He says it makes your job as a reporter more efficient because you can call people directly. And then I thank him for the information. Okay, so I have that fresh in my mind now for where I'm about to write my summary. So it starts immediately here. You've got 1 minute and 15 seconds. I'm going to start with the beginning. I asked my professor to explain the concept of cultivating sources after a lecture about the topic. He explained that cultivating sources means to develop relationships with people who may have information for a story that a reporter is working on. What was next? I asked if it was similar to networking. He replied, yes, but the focus is on developing meaningful relationships. I asked why it was important. He explained it makes reporting more efficient. Okay, I've used all my time looking over for errors, and time's up. That is the task. I know that was so much information, but I hope this video was really helpful to you if you're preparing to take the DET soon. If you have more questions about interactive listening or about anything on the DET, you can leave them in the comments down below, or you can chat with our support team on our website. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye, test takers.